Tonight, we'll sink into the midnight zone, a kilometer down where sunlight never reaches and creatures kindle their own gentle glow. You'll drift past falling marine snow, an anglerfish's tiny lantern, giant squid, silent whale falls, and the great nightly rise of life. Now let yourself rest. Tonight, imagine the sea at its calmest hour, a wide sheet of blue breathing beneath a bright sky. Sunlight rests on the surface, warm and unbroken, and everything here is lit, open, and easy to see. This bright upper layer has a name, the sunlit zone or the epipelagic. It reaches down about 200 meters, and within it nearly all the ocean's plants and familiar fish make their living from the sun. Let yourself sink unhurried just a few meters below the waves. The water is still luminous here, tinted a clear turquoise, and if you look up, you can watch the surface shimmer like a ceiling of moving glass. Yet the light is already changing. Color drains from the water faster than you might expect. Red is the first to leave, absorbed within the top 10 or 15 meters, so nothing down here can truly look red anymore. A crimson shrimp hanging at this depth would appear not scarlet but dull and gray, its warm color simply erased by the missing light. The deep ocean, it turns out, hides red things without the slightest effort. Keep sinking downward. Orange fades next, then yellow, each color slipping away in turn as the water swallows its particular light. What began as a full spectrum is quietly narrowing, band by band, into something cooler and simpler. Further down, the greens have grown faint as well. Blue alone travels on, scattering through the water in every direction, which is why the deeper sea glows with that endless, even oceanic blue we know from photographs. Blue survives because the water absorbs its short waves far less than it absorbs the longer, warmer colors. So the hue that reaches furthest into the sea is also the one our eyes find coolest, calmest, and most restful. At around 100 meters, the brightness has thinned to a soft blue dusk. There is still enough to see by, but it is a diffused and shadowless glow coming from everywhere and nowhere in particular. As you near 200 meters, you reach the base of the sunlit world. Above, the sun still rules. Below, its reign is ending. This is the last depth where daylight, however faint, still means anything at all. Cross that boundary and you enter the twilight zone, known to scientists as the mesopelagic. It begins near 200 meters and continues down to about 1,000, a vast middle layer wrapped in perpetual blue-gray dusk. The twilight zone is not fully dark, but forever caught in the mood of a fading evening. Picture the last few minutes of dusk on land, held permanently with no sunrise ever scheduled to follow it. This dim expanse is one of the largest living spaces on Earth, far greater than every forest and grassland combined, and almost no human eye has ever seen it directly. It simply stretches on, unwitnessed, mile after mile. Deeper still, near 300 or 400 meters, The light has dimmed to 1,000th of what it was at the surface, and then 1,000,000th. Your eyes, if they had time to adjust, might still catch the faintest blue trace. Many creatures of the twilight spend their days here, hanging in the blue and gazing upward against that faint glow from above. The silhouette of anything swimming overhead becomes the one reliable clue in an otherwise featureless sea. Some fish here wear mirrored silvery flanks that reflect the surrounding blue, letting them all but vanish into the water. In a world lit so evenly, the surest way to stay unseen is simply to match the light. As the light thins, the warmth thins with it. The sun-heated surface is left behind, and the water cools steadily, settling toward the deep, unchanging chill that fills most of the ocean far below the reach of day. Down past 600 meters, the blue has grown so deep it is nearly indistinguishable from black. Only a creature with enormous, sensitive eyes could gather what little glow remains, and even for them it is barely there. The pressure, too, has been mounting quietly with every meter, the weight of all that water pressing inward from every side. Yet the animals here are built for it, untroubled, moving through the heaviness as if it were nothing. Somewhere near 1,000 meters, the very last of the blue gives out. The final glimmers of sunlight are absorbed here, and beyond this line no trace of daylight has ever reached into the water below. You are hovering now at a remarkable threshold, the boundary where the sunlit and twilight world finally ends. Below your fins, if you had them, lies a realm that has never once known a single ray of sunshine. It is worth pausing to consider how far you have come. Every glimmer that guided this descent was borrowed sunlight, growing thinner with each meter, and now that long inheritance from the sky is nearly spent completely. Beneath you waits the midnight zone, a darkness so complete that sunlight becomes only a rumor, a thing the creatures below have never once encountered. Down there any light must be made, not received. For now, simply rest at the edge of that great night, unhurried, letting the last blue dissolve around you. Tonight we will drift on into it slowly and discover how much life quietly thrives where the sun has never been. Beneath the last dim glimmer of the twilight zone, the water turns to a blackness no eye has ever pierced. Here begins the midnight zone, the bathypelagic, 1,000 meters down, where the sun's memory finally fades to nothing. Not a single ray reaches this far. Above you, a kilometer of ocean has swallowed every color, every trace of daylight, leaving a darkness so complete that it has no morning and no dusk to break it. This is the eternal night, and it does not end at dawn. Down here, the clock of the sky means nothing. There is only water, and the endless deep, and a stillness that is held for millions of years. Consider as you drift toward sleep how much of the ocean lives like this. Roughly 3/4 of all the seawater on Earth lies below the reach of the sun, wrapped in perpetual unbroken night. The lit surface we know is only a thin, bright skin. Beneath it opens a vast dark ocean, layer upon layer, the true body of the sea, where sunlight has never once touched the water in all its history. Picture the whole planet's oceans poured into one measure. Most of that water is cold, black, and far from any shore, a hidden world larger than every desert, forest, and plain above it combined. Because it holds so much space in all three dimensions, the midnight zone is the largest living environment anywhere on Earth. No meadow or mountain range comes close to the room it offers life. Life here is not crowded into a surface. It is spread thinly through immense volumes of water, animals scattered across a darkness so wide that many may go a lifetime without ever meeting another of their own kind. The temperature settles to a steady chill, hovering only a few degrees above freezing, close to 4 degrees Celsius. There are no seasons to warm it, no afternoon sun, just an even, unchanging cold. That coldness is remarkably constant. Whether above these depths a storm rages or a summer blazes, the water here holds the same quiet temperature it has kept for ages, indifferent to the weather of the world. Now think of the weight of all that ocean pressing down from above. At these depths, the pressure grows to hundreds of times what you feel at the surface, a squeezing force almost beyond imagining. Every 10 meters of descent adds roughly the weight of another atmosphere. By 1,000 meters down, more than 100 times the surface pressure bears upon everything, and it only deepens as you sink further. It is enough to crumple a steel drum, to fold thick metal as if it were paper. And yet, through this crushing embrace, living creatures move, feed, and rest as though it were the most natural home in the world. The secret is simple and quiet. The animals of the deep carry almost no air inside them. Without hollow, gas-filled spaces to be squeezed, there is little for the pressure to crush. Their bodies are made largely of water and soft tissue, and water barely compresses at all, so the great weight passes through them evenly, inside matching outside, and they feel none of the strain we imagine. A fish that fills its swim bladder with gas up above would be undone here. The deep dwellers instead fill such spaces with fatty oils or watery fluids, matching the sea, moving in perfect balance with the pressure. So there is no struggle in it, no fight against the depth. To these creatures, the enormous force is not a burden, but simply the shape of the water they were born into, as ordinary to them as air is to us. Down here, even the currents grow languid, sliding through the black mid-water in slow, unhurried sweeps. Nothing rushes. The whole zone moves at the pace of something that has all the time in the world to spare. The floor still lies far below, for this midnight realm stretches from 1,000 meters down to nearly 4,000. Between those bounds hangs a column of water 3 kilometers deep, as tall as a great mountain, filled from top to bottom with the dark. Imagine descending through it, meter by meter, and finding the same lightless water waiting at every turn. No landmark passes, no horizon shifts, only the steady deepening of a night that seems to have no floor to reach. In such vastness, the ordinary rules of a bright world loosen their hold. There is no glow from above to swim toward, no shadow to hide within, for the darkness is everywhere and belongs to nothing. And still it is not empty. Through this immense, cold, pressing, dark move, countless living things, each shaped by the deep, each at home in a place that would end us in a moment, resting in the quiet enormity of the sea. It is a world built entirely without the sun, and yet it teems, holding more space for life than all the sunlit lands and shallow waters put together. The night below is not a border of the ocean, it is most of it. So let the mind sink and settle here, in the largest, darkest, most unhurried room on earth. For in all this lightless water something remarkable is stirring, a light of its own making, waiting just ahead in the black. In the last chapter, we let our eyes adjust to the total blackness of the midnight zone, where no sunlight has ever reached. Yet the deep is not truly empty of light. It is scattered tonight with living sparks made by the creatures themselves. Imagine a single point of blue-green light gliding past you in the void, then another and another. This is bioluminescence, the light that living bodies make, and here it is far from rare. It may be among the most widespread signals in the sea. A great majority of animals below the sunlit surface can make their own glow. Scientists towing nets and cameras through this water find that most of what they gather can light up here. Glowing is not the exception, but the ordinary way of being. The light is born from chemistry, a quiet reaction between two ingredients. One is a light-emitting molecule known broadly as luciferin. The other is an enzyme, luciferase, that helps the reaction along, and where they meet with oxygen, light appears. There is something remarkable about this glow that a candle cannot claim. It is cold light, releasing almost no heat at all. Most of the reaction's energy leaves as light rather than warmth, an efficiency our lamps have never matched. Picture a firefly blinking above a summer lawn. The chemistry glowing in its abdomen is a cousin of the reaction lighting the deep sea. Life discovered this trick again and again in dozens of separate lineages across the long history of the oceans. Almost all of this deep sea light shares a single color, a clear blue tinged with green. There is a reason it settled on that shade. Blue-green wavelengths travel farthest through seawater, slipping through, while other colors are quickly absorbed and lost. Because blue carries best, most deep animals evolved eyes tuned to see it, and little else. Their world is painted in one narrow band of color. A red glow, by contrast, would vanish within an arm's length, invisible to nearly everyone down here. Now consider the strange problem faced by an animal hanging in the twilight above. Even a trace of light filtering from the surface can outline its body from below, casting a faint telltale shadow against the glow overhead for anything watching. The solution is one of the sea's most elegant tricks, called counter-illumination. Along its underside, the animal switches on rows of tiny lights, matching the dim glow from above. Its shadow simply disappears, erased by light it makes itself. Some creatures manage this with astonishing care. They can adjust the brightness of their belly lights to follow the changing daylight overhead, dimming as clouds pass far above. To an eye looking up from below, they melt seamlessly into the pale ceiling of the sea. Light down here also serves as bait, quiet and luring. A predator may dangle a single glowing point on a slender stalk, letting it hover like a lone spark in the gloom. Smaller animals, drawn to investigate, swim slowly toward the light. The anglerfish, whom we will meet more fully in a later chapter, carries such a lantern above her mouth. It hangs there, glowing steadily in the dark, an invitation that costs little to display and asks only that curiosity come near. Not all light is a beckoning. Some of it is a startling flash, meant to buy an instant of escape. When something brushes too close, certain animals detonate a sudden burst of brilliance, and in that dazzling moment they slip away into the dark. There is a jelly that, when disturbed, spins rings of blue light around its bell like a turning pinwheel. Others release glowing clouds into the water, a shimmering smokescreen left behind, while the animal itself slips off unseen and unharmed. Some tiny creatures use light to summon help they cannot give themselves. A small copepod seized in the dark may spill a burst of glow that clings to its attacker. Suddenly lit, that hunter becomes a beacon for something larger and is hunted in turn. Light is also a language, spoken in flashes and patterns across the black midwater. Certain lanternfishes carry rows of glowing spots arranged in patterns unique to their kind and to their sex. In the dark, a body can announce exactly what it is. There are shrimp and squid that, in the moment of alarm, spew luminous fluid the way a squid at the surface releases ink. A cloud of cold fire blooms in the water, hanging there while the animal fades quietly out of the light it left behind. Consider how much of the deep-sea night is really this living light rather than true darkness. Lower a camera and hold still, and the blackness fills with floating sparks, brief flares and slow-turning glimmers, as though the water itself were faintly alight. It is worth pausing on how thoroughly this changes the idea of the abyss. We imagine the deep as an unbroken black, but for the animals living there it is a slowly shifting field of blue-green stars near and far, blinking their small messages. Even the falling debris can glow. Some of the fine particles drifting down carry luminous bacteria, so that the marine snow we will follow next chapter sometimes descends as a faint glimmering rain, lit from within as it sinks. Each of these lights is small, and each is brief, yet together they weave a quiet constellation through water that never sees the sun. It is a sky turned inward, made not of distant stars but of nearby living bodies, each glowing for its own reason. Nothing about this display is hurried or loud. The lights appear and fade on their own slow rhythms, a flash here, a lingering glow there across depths so vast that no single eye could ever take them all in at once. So let the deep remain lit in your mind as we glide onward, sparkling faintly from edge to edge. Above these living lights, another kind of gift is always falling, sifting down grain by grain from the sunlit world, and toward it we now turn. The living sparks of the deep carry their own small fires, yet nothing here feeds on light alone. All of it waits instead on something falling from far above, sinking down without a sound, hour upon hour. Sailors gave it a name that fits perfectly: marine snow. Look up into the black midwater, and you might imagine it, a slow scattering of pale flecks sinking past you, endless and unhurried, forever settling lower. These flecks are the remains of the sunlit world far overhead, small plankton that have finished their brief lives, the cast-off shells of tiny cells, threads of mucus and fragments too fine to name, all letting go and sinking. Some of it began as the droppings of small swimmers near the surface, tiny pellets bound with a little mucus. Nothing goes to waste. What one life releases becomes the slow-falling bread of the world below. A single flake may take many days to finish its descent, and in the deepest water it can linger for weeks. It falls through the twilight, then on into the eternal night, never hurrying, never resting. For nearly everything living beneath the reach of the sun, this falling snow is the meal that never fully stops. No plants grow down here in the gloom, so life leans on the harvest that rains from above. Small animals hang in the water with arms and threads spread wide, gathering each falling particle as it passes. Others simply open their mouths to the endless fall and let the snow settle in, flake by flake. As the flakes fall, many meet and cling together, gathering into larger, looser clumps. These heavier bundles sink more quickly, sliding down through the water in hours rather than weeks, carrying more with them as they go. Seen up close, a clump of marine snow is a fragile, gossamer thing, a small world of particles held in a web of transparent slime. It looks almost weightless, and yet down it sinks, steady and unfailing. Each flake is its own tiny habitat as it sinks. Bacteria settle over its surface, quietly breaking it down, and small creatures graze along it, so that a single falling crumb becomes a moving patch of life. Much of the snow never reaches the bottom at all. It is caught, eaten, and passed on again and again as it descends, so that only a small share of what leaves the surface arrives in the deep. In all this falling, the ocean is quietly doing something vast. Each flake carries carbon drawn from the air by life at the surface, and as it sinks, that carbon is carried down into the deep and stored. Scientists call this slow work the biological pump. Grain by grain, over ages, the falling snow moves carbon from the sunlit sea into the dark below, where much of it settles and stays for a very long time. Far above, the snowfall rises and fades with the seasons. When the surface blooms with plankton under longer days, the deep sees a thicker fall arrive weeks later, a distant echo of a spring it will never witness. This falling never truly ceases across every ocean. At this very hour, countless pale flakes are sinking downward through miles of water, an unbroken snowfall that has been sifting into the deep for millions of years. To animals in the lightless deep, the arrival of a large clump is an event. Some sense it gliding near by faint chemical traces in the water and rise a little to meet it before it slips past. What finally reaches the seafloor gathers there as a fine, pale ooze layer upon layer, soft underfoot in the blackness. It is the accumulated snow of countless years, a slow sediment built largely from things that once lived. Along that muddy floor unhurried animals sift the settled snow for whatever nourishment remains. Sea cucumbers and small worms move over the ooze, taking in the mud and drawing out the last faint traces of the fallen. The bright surface and the black depths are bound together by this falling. A sunbeam caught by a single cell near the top of the sea becomes, weeks later, a meal in a place no sunlight will ever reach. Picture yourself resting somewhere in that mid-water dark, watching the flakes drift by your eyes. They pass without hurry, lit now and then by a distant living spark, an endless, noiseless weather that never turns to storm and never clears. Unlike the snow of the surface world, this fall carries no chill and makes no sound. It does not pile into banks overnight and melt by noon. It simply keeps coming, thickening and thinning across the seasons, yet somewhere always falling. Every mouth in the midnight water, from the smallest floating jelly to fish waiting in the unlit deep, is fed in the end by this quiet rain. It is the foundation on which the whole hidden world is built. There is a strange tenderness to it, a whole realm sustained not by struggle, but by a slow gift arriving from a place its creatures will never see. Everything down here is, in some sense, made of the sunlight it will never know. So let the image stay with you as we sail onward, an unhurried snow always falling through the endless night, feeding the darkness, and among the first to hang in that falling, catching it on threads of living glass, are the drifters we meet next. As that endless snow drifts down through the unlit water, it is not falling into emptiness. Suspended alongside it, almost invisible, are the most abundant animals of the open deep, creatures made of little more than water and living light. Picture a jellyfish pulsing slowly through the lightless deep. Its body is a translucent bell, opening and closing in an unhurried rhythm, easing the animal forward with a movement that looks less like swimming than like breathing. A jellyfish is made almost entirely of water, as much as 95%, held within two thin layers of cells. There is no brain, no heart, no bones, only a simple ancient design that has wandered these seas for ages. In the open ocean, there is nowhere to hide, no rock, no weed, no shadow to slip behind. So many of these wanderers have taken a different path to safety. They have become clear as glass, nearly erased from sight. Light passes straight through their watery flesh with almost nothing to catch it. To a passing hunter, a transparent animal is barely there at all. A faint smudge, a trick of the eye, a body that hides by holding almost no substance. Among them move the comb jellies, or ctenophores, small oval creatures no larger than a thumb or a fist. They do not pulse like true jellyfish. Instead, they travel on rows of tiny beating hairs called combs that line their bodies. These combs are made of fused cilia, thousands of them, rowing in shimmering waves. As they beat, they scatter what little light exists into running bands of rainbow color, so a comb jelly seems to trail moving ribbons of blue and green. That flickering rainbow is not a glow of the creature's own making. It is ordinary light bent and split by the moving combs, the way a film of oil spreads colors across water, a passing, structural shimmer rather than a true light. Yet many comb jellies can make light of their own as well. When touched or startled, they flush with a bioluminescent glimmer along their combs, a brief blue-green pulse that fades back into the surrounding gloom almost as soon as it appears. Few animals alive are as delicate. A comb jelly is so fragile that a careless current can tear it, and nets that lift them to the surface often bring up only a faint cloud of jelly dissolved by the journey. How does a creature so simple find its meals? Many jellies hang with trailing tendrils spread wide, a nearly invisible net that gathers tiny swimming animals and flakes of the falling snow without haste and without any chase. Then there are the strangest travelers of all, the siphonophores. From a distance one looks like a single long, slender animal, a thread of light hanging in the water. But it is not one animal, it is many living as one. A siphonophore is a colony of many small bodies, each grown from the same origin and each shaped for a single task, some pulsing to move the whole, some gathering food, some helping it reproduce. Together they behave as one seamless creature. Each of these little bodies is called a zooid, and no single one could live alone. Strung together, they can form a chain of astonishing length. One kind, the giant siphonophore, has been measured longer than a blue whale. By some measures, these colonies are among the longest animals on Earth, living lengths of 40 meters and more, thinner than a rope hanging in the water like a delicate string of glass beads strung through the night. Many siphonophores fish the water with a hanging curtain of stinging threads, spread like a fringed net across the current. Small creatures swim into it and are drawn slowly toward the colony, which feeds simply by waiting in the flow. Some of these colonies glow with a light of their own, and a few even flick glowing lures to draw curious prey close. In the endless night, a small point of living light can be an invitation as much as a beacon. It is easy to think of the deep sea as empty, but these gelatinous wanderers may be the most abundant large life in all the open ocean. Layer upon layer of them fills the water, spread thinly through an enormous volume. The open ocean is the largest living space on the planet, vaster than every forest and grassland combined, and it is these clear, pulsing animals that fill so much of it, a hidden multitude gliding unseen beneath the waves. Life here moves without hurry, and the jellies are perfectly suited to it. Their watery bodies cost almost nothing to build and little to carry, so they can thrive where food is scarce, asking very little of the barren deep. This way of living is very old. Jellyfish and their kin were sailing the seas long before the first fish, long before there were bones or shells or teeth, an ancient unhurried design that has outlasted whole ages of the earth. Imagine floating there among them tonight, in water black and cold, surrounded by shapes you can barely see, a soft pulse beside you, a ribbon of shimmer passing overhead, a thread of pale light stretching away farther than you can follow. None of them is in any rush. They rise and sink on the slow currents, feeding on what falls, glowing when they must, spending their whole lives suspended in the water, carried rather than swimming through the great dark middle of the sea. For all their delicate light, the jellies wander without purpose or plan, glimmering by chance. But elsewhere in the deep, other creatures have learned to use light with intention, to lure, to signal, to hunt, and it is toward them that we now turn. Among the drifting jellies of the last chapter, another traveler waits without stirring at all. She hangs in the lightless deep, dark and unhurried, and from her brow a single small light burns like a lantern carried into a cave. This is the anglerfish, one of the deep sea's most storied hunters. Her name comes from the way she fishes, dangling a lit lure before her mouth and letting the eternal night carry her rare supper slowly toward it. That lure sits at the tip of a slender rod of flesh called the Elysium, a fin spine reshaped over ages of evolution. It rises from her forehead and arches forward, a living fishing pole grown from her own body. The glow at its end is not her own doing. Inside a small bulb called the esca live countless bioluminescent bacteria, and their chemistry makes the light while she simply carries it, a partnership sealed in the black midwater. She offers the bacteria shelter and a steady supply of nourishment. In return, they give her a beacon she could never kindle alone. Neither could thrive so well without the other, two lives braided together far below the reach of the sun. When she needs to vanish, she can dim the lantern, easing back the flow of blood that feeds the bulb, so the glow rises and fades on her own terms in a sea that offers almost no other lights. Life down here is mostly waiting. Meals are scarce in the midnight zone, and an anglerfish may hang almost motionless for hours, spending as little energy as she can, her lure glowing like a question set out into the gloom. Small creatures of the deep are drawn to light the way moths are drawn to a candle. A curious shrimp or little fish approaches the glow, mistaking it for food or company, and glides closer without sensing the shape behind it. Behind that gentle light waits an enormous mouth. When prey wanders near enough, the anglerfish opens her jaws in one sudden expanding gulp, and long inward curving teeth close around the meal before the midnight water has time to settle again. Her body is built for feast after long famine. Loose, stretchy skin and an expandable stomach let her swallow prey nearly as large as herself, storing one rare meal against the many empty days that are sure to follow. The hunter we have been picturing is always female. The famous anglerfish of story and drawing, with her glowing lure and her cavern of a mouth, is she alone. The males live an utterly different and far smaller life of their own. A male of some deep-sea species may be a fraction of her size, a few centimeters against her heavier bulk. He carries no lure at all of his own. His whole existence is a search through the darkness for a single female. To find her across such vastness, he is mostly senses. Large eyes catch the faint print of her lure, and big nostrils read the trace of her scent carried on the current, guiding him along the many unlit miles. In certain species, when at last he finds her, he bites onto her side and never lets go. His skin fuses with hers, their blood vessels join, and slowly his body melts into a small permanent part of her own. From then on, he draws his nourishment from her bloodstream, and in return he becomes a lasting source of sperm, ready whenever she is. A single large female may carry several such tiny mates fused quietly along her flanks. It sounds strange to us, yet in a place where two anglerfish may almost never meet, holding onto a partner forever is a quiet solution. Finding a mate once is hard enough. This way she need never search again. There are more than 100 kinds of deep-sea anglerfish, and their lures come in a wonderful range of shapes. Some glow as simple round bulbs, others branch into glowing threads or fringes, each a different invitation hung in the night. A few wear a second glowing barbel trailing from the chin, a soft branching lantern that sways beneath them. Each design has been shaped over long stretches of time to lure the particular small lives that share its depth. The anglerfish is not the only lantern bearer in these depths. Nearby, hidden in the same blackness, swims a slender hunter called the dragonfish, and it holds a secret light unlike any we have met so far. Almost all light in the deep sea is blue-green, and over ages most animals here lost the ability to see red. Red simply does not reach these depths from above, so their eyes never needed it. The dragonfish, however, produces a deep red glow from an organ set just beneath its eye, a color that almost no other creature down here is able to perceive. To nearly everything around it, that faint light stays completely invisible. Its own eyes uniquely are tuned to see that particular red, so the dragonfish carries a private searchlight, sweeping the unlit water and revealing prey that never knows it has been found, lit in a color meant for one alone. So the deep holds many kinds of light and many reasons for them. One creature dangles a lantern to draw a meal closer. Another shines in a hue kept secret from the world, each glow a quiet tool in the eternal night. Let these small lantern bearers fade out of mind now, their lights winking on and off in the vast dark below you. Further out in that same blackness move creatures far larger, giants we will meet as the night goes on. The little lantern bearers we followed glide on their way, and the water ahead opens wider than before. Here in the boundless night, a kilometer down, live the largest hunters without bones on earth, moving unseen through the black. Imagine a body longer than a bus, pale and streaming, with 8 arms and 2 longer tentacles trailing behind. This is the giant squid, a creature so elusive that living ones were filmed in the wild only in recent years. Set into that great head are among the largest eyes known in all the animal world, each one as wide as a dinner plate. They gather the faintest glimmers, the stray sparks of living light scattered through the deep. An eye that sighs can catch a whisper of light no smaller eye could sense. Some scientists think these enormous eyes evolved to notice something vast approaching in the dark, the faint glow stirred up by a diving whale. Far to the south, in the frigid waters that circle Antarctica, lives a cousin heavier still, the colossal squid, shorter of arm, but broader and far more massive. It is thought to be the weightiest invertebrate ever measured. Along its 2 longest tentacles, the colossal squid carries rows of swiveling hooks, curved and sharp, that turn to grip. Its own eyes may be even larger than the giant squid's, great dark spheres built for a world with almost no light. These squid drift through the midnight zone as living shadows, pulsing forward by drawing water in and pushing it out. They feed on deep-sea fishes and smaller squid, seizing prey with suckered arms and drawing it toward a hidden beak. At the center of those arms sits a beak of hard, dark chitin, the firmest part of an otherwise yielding body. It is the one piece that endures, and beaks are often all we find of squid this size. Into this realm, from the bright world far above, comes a hunter that breathes air, the sperm whale. It is the largest toothed predator alive, and it descends on purpose into the lightless deep to find these squid. Picture a whale longer than a fishing boat filling its great lungs at the surface, then tilting head down and slipping away below. It may sink a kilometer or more, sometimes far deeper, on a single held breath. Down it goes, heartbeat slowing, blood drawn inward to spare oxygen, muscles storing oxygen in their very fibers. A sperm whale can stay under for around an hour, moving through the cold black with no need to breathe. In water where its eyes are nearly useless, the whale hunts by sound. From within its huge oil-filled head it sends out clicks, the loudest sound made by any animal, and listens for the echoes returning from the dark. Each click sweeps outward and comes back changed, and from those returning whispers the whale builds a picture of what lies ahead. A hovering squid, however still it holds itself, cannot hide its shape from sound. And so, somewhere in the endless night, the two meet. There is no thunder to it, only a slow closing of distance. The vast warm-blooded diver and the pale cold-blooded wanderer together for a few strange minutes. The squid may wheel away, arms spread wide, pushing hard against the water to fade back into the gloom. Sometimes it escapes into the blackness. Sometimes the whale, larger and tireless, follows the echoes and closes the gap. When these giants are caught, they leave their marks behind. Many sperm whales carry pale rings across their skin, round scars ringed by tiny teeth, pressed there by the grasping suckers of squid met far below. Read those scars and you can almost trace the story. A whale, deep in the lightless water, holding a struggle that we have almost never witnessed. Nearly everything we know of these meetings we have read from the bodies of both. For all their size, these squid remain among the least seen large animals on the planet. No one has watched a giant squid live out its days. We glimpse them only in fragments, in rare films, in stomachs and strandings. After its long hunt, the whale turns upward at last and rises through the brightening layers toward the distant light. It breaks the surface, breathes in a great misty rush, and rests before folding down into the deep once more. Consider the whole of it, a warm bloated animal leaving the air behind, traveling down a mile into the cold and returning over and over all its life. The deep is not its home, yet it knows the way. The squid, though, never leaves at all. It was born in the lightless deep and will live out all its years there, never rising to feel the sun, never needing the surface the whale must always return to. There is a strange grandeur in imagining them out there tonight, unseen eyes like pale moons hanging in the deep, and somewhere a whale descending in silence to meet one. All of it unfolds without a witness. And these are only the greatest of the deep's hunters. All around them, in the same unlit water, countless smaller lives are shaped by the same hard problem: how to find a meal where meals are so rare. So let the giants pass on into their darkness, the whale climbing, the squid holding its place ahead. Lie stranger, smaller creatures still, ones that have learned to swallow whatever the scarce deep happens to send their way. Far above you tonight, sperm whales still glide through the black, hunting the great squid we followed a moment ago. Sink lower now past those giants into a realm where the animals are small and meals are almost impossibly rare. Here in the midnight zone, food does not arrive on schedule. Days may pass, sometimes weeks, before anything edible floats within reach. Life in the lightless deep is shaped, above all, by this long waiting between meals. Think of how a body might answer such scarcity, not with speed or strength, but with a single unhurried rule. When something finally passes close, take it, whatever its size, and do not let it slip away again. The gulper eel is one answer to that rule. A slender, dark ribbon of a creature, perhaps as long as your arm, It moves through the deep with a long whip of a tail trailing behind it into the gloom. Yet its body seems almost an afterthought beside its mouth. The jaws are enormous, loosely hinged, opening far wider than the eel's own girth, so the head appears to unfold into a great dark scoop of skin. Because of this vast gape, it earned a second name, the pelican eel, after the bird whose poached bill swings open to engulf a catch. Below the sunlight, this eel carries a pouch of its own into the eternal night. Picture the mouth ballooning outward as it feeds. The floor of the jaw stretches like a loose net, and the stomach behind it can expand as well, swelling to hold a larger meal than its slender body would ever suggest. This is the deep sea's quiet economy. When a meal is uncertain and may not come again for a long while, it makes sense to be able to take in far more than seems possible, and to store it slowly within. The gulper mostly feeds on small shrimp and other tiny prey, gathering them as it swims with that open scoop. But its expandable frame means nothing that wanders near need be refused for the simple crime of being too big. At the tip of its long tail glows a faint pink or reddish light, a small luminous organ far from the mouth. Some think it may lure curious animals close, drawing them gently toward the waiting jaws in the dark. Now imagine a very different design for the same problem. Some hunters of the deep do not swallow whole, instead they seize, holding fast to whatever they strike so that a rare catch can never twist free. The fangtooth is such a fish, small, no longer than your hand, blunt-headed and dark. It carries teeth so long that they cannot fully fit inside a closed mouth without special sockets to receive them. Its lower fangs are, for its size, among the longest teeth of any fish in the sea. 2 pockets in the roof of the skull hold the points when the jaws shut, so the fish does not pierce its own brain. For all their fierce appearance, fangtooth are unhurried creatures, hanging in the cold and taking what comes. Their fearsome grin is not for cruelty, but for holding a living trap set and left open in the black water. The viperfish follows a similar path. Long and slim, silver dark, it bears teeth so oversized they curve back past the eyes when the mouth is closed, a needle cage from which little that enters can easily escape. Along its back rises a single long fin ray tipped with a glowing lure, dangled forward over the mouth like a lantern on a fishing pole. What comes to inspect that small light glides, unknowing toward the teeth below. These weapons look savage, yet the pace of their use is anything but. A viperfish may wait a long while, nearly motionless, spending as little energy as it can, until the rare moment a meal at last appears. That thrift is the deeper truth of the swallowers. In water this cold and this empty of food, the greatest danger is not being caught but running out, burning more fuel than the scarce meals can ever replace. So their bodies run slow. Metabolisms idle low, hearts beat unhurried, and long stretches pass with barely any movement. the whole animal conserving itself the way one might bank a fire down to embers. A single good meal in such a life can sustain a creature for a remarkably long time. The oversized jaws and the swelling stomach are simply tools for turning one rare encounter into many days of quiet survival. There is a strange elegance to it once you set aside the teeth. These are not frantic beasts but careful economists of the dark, matching their rare hunger to a world that offers rare gifts and wasting nothing. Consider how far this is from the meadows and reefs of the sunlit world, where food is everywhere and life races to grab its share. Down here, the tempo of eating slows to match the slow arrival of anything to eat. And so the swallowers hover and wait through the long hours, mouths ready, lights faintly burning, asking nothing of the deep but the occasional small mercy of a passing shape in the current. Rest for a moment with that image before we drift onward. A ribbon of an eel, its pouch furled, hanging weightless in the black. To find that rare meal at all, an animal must first sense it coming, which is where we turn next. A mouth that can swallow more than its own weight is one answer to scarcity. Yet down here, before anything can be eaten, it must first be found, and in this blackness, finding is a quieter art than devouring. Here at 1,000 meters and below, sunlight has thinned to almost nothing, a memory of blue too faint for our eyes. The animals of the deep have spent millions of years learning to gather what little remains. One strategy is simply to build a larger eye. Many midwater fishes carry eyes enormous for their bodies, wide apertures open to the gloom, straining to catch a single stray photon filtering down from the world above. Inside those eyes, the retina is packed almost entirely with rod cells, the receptors tuned for dimness rather than color. Layered densely, sometimes stacked in banks, they ring the faintest signal from a nearly empty darkness. Some carry a mirror behind the retina, a reflective layer called the tapetum. Light that slips past the receptors is bounced back for a second chance to be caught, the same shine that flares in a cat's eyes at night. Most of this looking is aimed upward. Against the last dim glow filtering from the surface, a creature swimming overhead casts a faint silhouette, and to eyes turned toward that glow, even a shadow becomes something worth noticing. No animal has taken this upward gaze further than the barrel eye. Imagine a small fish, hovering almost motionless in the cold water, its whole forehead a transparent dome of clear fluid, a living window you can see straight through. Beneath that glassy shield sit two eyes shaped like short tubes, glowing a vivid green. They point straight up through the top of the head, staring out through the fish's own transparent skull toward the faint light far overhead. A tube is a strange shape for an eye, but a useful one. It works like a small telescope, trading the wide view of a round eye for greater sensitivity, gathering more light along a single, carefully aimed line of sight. For years, those tubular eyes seemed a puzzle, fixed forever on the ceiling of the sea. The two small dark spots above the mouth, so like eyes, are not eyes. They are the fish's nostrils, its organs of smell. Then living barrel eyes were filmed at last, and the puzzle dissolved. The green eyes can rotate within that fluid-filled dome, swiveling from their upward watch to gaze forward, so the fish can see the food its mouth is reaching for. That green may be a filter as much as a color. It seems to dampen the pale downwelling sunlight, helping the barrel eye pick out the sharper glow of living light, the spark of a jelly or a hidden luminous meal. A cousin of the barrel eye goes further still. This spookfish focuses light not with a lens, but with a mirror inside its eye, a curved array of tiny crystals, the only vertebrate known to see the world this way. Yet vision, however refined, has its limit, and past a certain depth. Some animals stop investing in eyes entirely. Where not a single photon reaches, an eye becomes an expensive organ, tuned to nothing, and evolution quietly lets it fade. For these creatures, the whole body becomes an ear for touch. Along each flank runs the lateral line, a row of tiny sensors that reads the water itself, feeling the press and swirl of every current and passing ripple. Through this sense, a swimming animal leaves a signature in the water, a faint wake of motion spreading outward. A fish that cannot see at all can still feel another body glide near, mapping its neighbors by touch alone. Smell carries far and cold, still water. Dissolved traces linger and travel, and many deep-sea fishes trail broad, feathery nostrils that read these chemical whispers, following a thread of scent across distances the eye could never bridge. Others reach out to touch. Long, trailing barbels drape from chin and fin like slender fingers, brushing the water and the seabed, tasting and feeling for the buried or the still, a way of reading the world by contact. Rarely does one sense work alone. A single hunter may hold its great eyes toward the glow above, feel the currents along its flank, and taste the water gliding past all at once, braiding these threads into a single quiet picture. Every one of these senses is shaped by scarcity. In a place where a meal may be days apart, an animal cannot afford to waste effort, and so it keeps only the perceptions that truly earn their cost in this economy of dark. It is hard for us, creatures of daylight, to picture such a life. We lean so heavily on our eyes that we forget how much a world can be known through pressure, through scent, through the lightest brush against the skin. Each of these animals, then, lives inside its own version of the deep. The barrel eye's world is a ceiling of pale, falling light. The blind swimmer's is a field of touch, one lightless deep, sensed in wholly different ways. None of this was designed for us to marvel at, yet marvel we do. Each transparent dome and mirrored eye and trailing whisker is simply an answer the deep arrived at slowly over unimaginable stretches of unlit time. So the eyes and the sightless alike drift on through the eternal night, each reading the water in its own fashion, and far below even them lies a floor of endless mud, the Abyssal Plain where our journey settles next. After all those searching eyes and listening bodies, the water finally ends. Somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 meters down, the long fall of the deep meets a floor, and the descent that began so far above comes to rest. This is the Abyssal Plain, and it is enormous. Flat mud stretches in every direction, farther than any eye could follow, covering more of the planet's surface than all the continents combined. It is among the largest habitats on Earth. Picture a plain so level that it can run for 100 kilometers and rise by no more than a few tens of meters. No hills, no valleys, only an unbroken expanse of sediment beneath kilometers of cold, unlit water. The mud itself has a name, ooze. It is built from marine snow, the ceaseless fall of tiny dead things sinking from the sunlit world far above, settling here grain by grain across unimaginable stretches of time. In some places, this sediment gathers at only a centimeter every 1,000 years. The floor you would rest upon down here is a slow archive, each layer a record of ancient rains of snow that fell long before us. Down here, the water hovers near freezing, and the weight of the sea overhead presses with hundreds of times the pressure at the surface. Almost nothing moves the water. Currents that reach this deep barely stir the settled dust. You might expect such a place to be entirely empty. Yet across this muddy floor, life is spread thin and unhurried, scattered like a few guests in an enormous darkened room, each one living far from the next. Everything here lives on that falling snow. The plain is a great table set with the leftovers of the ocean above, and its inhabitants are gatherers and sifters, making a living from what sinks down and no more. The most common of them are sea cucumbers, soft and slow, grazing the sediment as cattle graze a field. They swallow mouthfuls of mud, draw the scant nourishment from it, and leave clean trails winding behind them. On many abyssal plains, sea cucumbers make up most of the large life by sheer weight, trundling over the ooze in their thousands. They are the unhurried herds of the deep, the quiet cattle of a lightless prairie. Among them wanders the sea pig, a plump pink sea cucumber that walks on stubby, water-filled legs. Sea pigs gather in loose herds, all of them facing the same way, easing toward wherever the richest snow has lately fallen. Barely the size of your hand, translucent and rounded, a sea pig looks almost like a small toy left on the seabed. Yet these creatures are perfectly made for this world, tasting the mud for the freshest fallen crumbs. Standing motionless above the mud is one of the plain's strangest residents, the tripod fish. It balances on three long, stiffened fins like a creature on stilts, lifting its body clear of the ooze to wait in the current. Perched on its stilts, the tripod fish turns to face the faint current and spreads long feelers forward, sensing small prey gliding past in the gloom. It hardly needs its eyes here. Touch and vibration do the finding. Scattered across the sediment lie brittle stars, delicate relatives of the starfish, their thin arms fanned out upon the mud. In some regions they carpet the floor in great gardens, thousands of slender arms sifting the water for stray morsels. Here and there sit strange rosettes and delicate mounds, so easy to mistake for scattered stones. These are xenophyophores, single living cells grown as large as your fist, among the biggest single-celled organisms known anywhere on Earth. Each xenophyophore builds itself a fragile home from grains of sediment, cementing mud and fragments into an intricate shape. Within these tiny castles, countless smaller creatures shelter, so a single cell becomes an oasis of life on the bare plain. Other wanderers pass through as well. Pale sea spiders stepping on thread-like legs, and giant isopods, armored cousins of the woodlouse, grown to the length of a forearm as they scavenge whatever has come to rest. Life moves at a different speed on the Abyssal Plain. With so little food arriving, these animals grow without hurry, spend energy sparingly, and may live for many decades, each act of eating or moving a small event in a long life. Look closely at the ooze and you would find it written over with tracks, the trails of animals that crossed hours or years ago. In water this undisturbed, a single footprint in the mud can linger for a very long time. Now and then a greater gift arrives, a dead fish, a clump of sunken weed, a fall of richer debris. From across the plain, scattered scavengers sense it and converge, gathering slowly at the unexpected feast before wandering apart again. Taken together, these plains form the single largest habitat on our planet, and most of it has never been seen by human eyes. We hold finer maps of the moon and of Mars than of this endless. Imagine lying here on that boundless plain tonight, the snow drifting down like a slow, silent weather that never ends, a sea pig grazing somewhere near, the whole vast floor breathing at the pace of centuries. And yet the plain is not entirely still everywhere. Somewhere across this muddy expanse, the flat floor breaks and the seabed itself begins to burn, where heat rises from within the earth and gathers a stranger garden of life around it. Across the muddy plain we crossed together, the seabed seemed changeless for endless miles, yet somewhere ahead the flat monotony breaks and the ground begins to warm as if the planet itself were breathing through a hidden seam. Here the crust is thin, cracked along ridges where the sea floor slowly pulls apart. Seawater seeps down through the fissures, sinks toward the heat below, and returns transformed hot, mineral-laden and charged with the fire of the deep earth. Picture that water plunging into the rock, heated by magma to temperatures that would boil any surface sea. Only the immense pressure keeps it liquid, and when it rises again, it carries dissolved metals and minerals gathered from the stone. Where this scalding fluid meets the near-freezing water above, the minerals can no longer stay dissolved. They fall out of solution in an instant, and dark particles bloom upward in billowing clouds, like smoke pouring from a chimney in the deep. These are the black smokers, towering vents that gush shimmering plumes of mineral-rich water. Scientists gave them the name for the sooty color of their clouds, though nothing here is burning in the way a fire burns above. As the dissolved minerals cool and settle, they harden into rock around each rising jet. Grain by grain, the deposits stack upward, and over years a chimney grows, a slender spire built entirely from the water's own cargo. Some of these mineral towers rise as tall as a house. A few reach the height of a 10-story building before they topple. They grow with surprising speed for stone, then crumble and slowly rebuild across the ridge. Now consider the deeper marvel of this place. In a realm where nearly every meal sinks down as marine snow from the sunlit surface, these vents feed themselves, nourished not by light but by chemistry. The rising fluid is rich in hydrogen sulfide, the chemical that gives rotten eggs their smell. To most life it is poison, yet here whole communities depend on it, drawing energy from these molecules the way a garden draws on the sun. Bacteria are the foundation of it all. Instead of using sunlight to make food, they break apart the sulfur chemicals, releasing energy locked inside, a process called chemosynthesis, the quiet engine of every life that gathers here. These microbes grow in astonishing numbers, coating the rocks in living mats and clouding the water in pale, hovering veils. They are the meadow of this sunless garden, and everything larger comes in the end to graze upon them. The strangest gardeners of all stand rooted around the warmest cracks. Giant tube worms, taller than a person, swaying in the pale tubes they grow around themselves. Their scarlet plumes reach out into the shimmering current. Look closely and you find something almost impossible. These worms have no mouth, no stomach, no gut at all. They never eat in any way we would recognize, and yet they thrive, growing swiftly in the warmth of the vent. Their secret lies within. Packed inside each worm are billions of the same chemosynthetic bacteria, sheltered in a special organ and fed the chemicals the worm gathers. In exchange, the bacteria nourish their host, a partnership sealed in the dark. That scarlet plume is the meeting place of the exchange. It is rich in a special blood that binds both oxygen and sulfide at once, ferrying them down to the bacteria within, which is why the plume glows so deeply red. Around the worm's feet, a stranger congregation gathers. Ghost white crabs pick their way over the mineral crust, blind or nearly so, guided by scent and touch through water no eye could ever read in the endless night. Pale shrimp swarm in the thousands over some vents, so densely packed they seem to boil across the rock. Many carry a patch on their backs that senses the faint glow of the hot water, keeping them near the warmth unscathed. In the cooler cracks nearby, great clams and mussels lie clustered in beds, some as long as a dinner plate. They too hold chemosynthetic bacteria in their tissues, filtering the mineral water and letting their tiny partners do the feeding. Step back, and the whole scene glows with a faint warmth in an ocean that is otherwise frigid and lightless. Around each vent, life crowds thick and vivid, while just beyond its reach the seabed falls away into cold, empty gloom. Together, the vents form true oases, islands of abundance scattered across the barren deep, each one a crowded harbor of living things. Between them stretch vast reaches of near-empty water, keeping these refuges rare and precious in the lightless world. Yet no vent lasts forever. In time the cracks shift, the hot flow wanders or fails, and the chimney falls silent, and when the warmth fades, the whole gathering must find another rising spring or slowly settle into stillness. To survive this, the vent creatures cast their young into the current as drifting larvae, tiny travelers that ride the deep sea flow for miles. Somewhere out in the black midwater, a few will find a fresh, warm crack and begin again. There is a quiet wonder in this discovery. Life here needs no sun, and some scientists believe that near cracks like these, in the warm mineral dark, the very first living things on Earth may have begun. Rest now with that thought, that even in the coldest dark, life finds a way to bloom around a little warmth. And not only the vents offer such refuge, sometimes an oasis arrives from far above, falling slowly from the sunlit world. At the vents, life fed on the planet's own chemistry, needing no sunlight, yet the deep has another way of receiving a feast, not welling up from below, but arriving slowly from the world of light above. Far overhead, a great whale has lived its long life near the surface, breathing air, crossing whole oceans. When at last its heart grows quiet, its enormous body begins to sink, leaving the bright water it has always known. The descent is unhurried, a fall measured in hours. Past the fading light, through the twilight, down into the midnight zone, the body glides lower and lower, carrying the sunlit world's riches into the eternal night below. Miles down, it settles onto the Abyssal Plain, that boundless floor of pale mud we crossed before. In the surrounding emptiness, food is scarce and slow to come. Here all at once lies a mountain of it. A single whale can bring to the seafloor as much carbon as 2,000 years of marine snow, all delivered in one quiet arrival. For the creatures of the plain, it is a windfall almost beyond measure. Word of such a bounty travels through the water as scent, dissolved and spreading on the slow currents. From miles around, the first scavengers turn toward it, following the faint chemical trail across the lightless deep. Among the earliest to arrive are hagfish, pale and eel-like, ancient in design. They burrow into the carcass and feed from within, able to absorb nourishment straight through their skin as they rest in the flesh. Larger visitors come too, sleeper sharks, slow-moving giants of the frigid deep, arrive without haste and take great mouthfuls, their sluggish metabolism well suited to a quiet life spent between rare and enormous meals far apart. Closer to the bone, clouds of amphipods gather, small shrimp-like crustaceans in their countless thousands. They swarm over every surface, tireless, nibbling the softening tissue away flake by flake through the long hours of the sunless dark. Together, this crowd can strip tens of kilograms of flesh in a single day. Over months, sometimes a year or two, they reduce the whale to a bare skeleton, and the first chapter of its afterlife draws to a close. Now the great bones lie exposed upon the mud, but the feast is far from over. Into the sediment around them has soaked a rich broth of oils and fragments, and a new community moves in to claim it. Small snails graze the enriched ground. Polychaete worms tunnel through the darkened mud. Crustaceans pick among the ribs. This is the enrichment stage, when the leavings of the whale seed the surrounding floor with an unexpected garden of life. And then upon the bones themselves, a stranger creature takes hold. These are the osedacs, the bone-eating worms, soft, feathery plumes no longer than a finger, rooted into the whale's skeleton like a fringe of red flowers. The osedax has no mouth and no gut at all. Instead, it sends root-like tendrils down into the bone, and within them live bacteria that break the buried fats and proteins into food the worm can share. Stranger still, the plumes swaying above the bone are all females. Each shelters within her tube a harem of dwarf males, microscopic and forever young, doing nothing but fertilizing the eggs she casts into the water. Year after year, without rush, these worms mine the skeleton from the inside, dissolving it slowly to reach the marrow's oils. A single whale can feed generations of them, long after every trace of flesh is gone. Deep within the porous bone, another transformation is underway. Bacteria feast on the fats locked in the skeleton, and as they work, they release hydrogen sulfide, the same chemical breath that rises from the hydrothermal vents. And so the whale becomes a vent of its own. Pale mats of chemosynthetic bacteria spread across the bones, feeding on that sulfide, turning the chemistry of decay into the foundation of a whole new food web. Around these mats gather mussels and clams that carry chemical-feeding bacteria in their gills, the very kinds found at distant vents and seeps. For such creatures, each whale fall is a stepping stone across the empty seafloor. This final stage is the longest of all. On the bones of a single great whale, life can flourish for decades, a slow banquet lasting longer than the animal itself may have lived up in the sunlit sea. Scientists who study these fallen giants have counted hundreds of species living upon them, and a few have never been found anywhere else on Earth. Each carcass becomes its own small, self-contained world in the deep. Picture it. Across mile upon mile of barren mud, these rare islands of plenty flicker into being, thrive for a generation and fade, scattered oases that let the life of the deep drift slowly from one to the next. There's a certain grace in it. Nothing here is wasted. The ending of one enormous life becomes the beginning of countless others, its substance passed on, gathered up gently by the hungry, unhurried deep. In time, Even the last of the bones will soften and dissolve, and the plain will grow smooth and dark once more. But the deep is in no hurry, for down here, as we will see, everything unfolds slowly. A whale's bones can feed the deep for decades, and that lingering abundance is no accident. Down here, life itself keeps a different clock, one that ticks in years and centuries rather than the hurried heartbeats above. The reason begins with the cold. In water hovering just above freezing, every chemical reaction of life slows, and the bodies of deep animals move through their days at a fraction of the speed we would call ordinary. Then there is the scarcity. So little food drifts down from the sunlit world that a meal may be a rare event, and an animal that races through its energy would simply starve in the waiting. So the deep runs on thrift. A low metabolism is the great survival trick of these waters, letting a creature stretch a single mouthful across weeks, burning its fuel as slowly as a candle guttering in a windless room. Movement follows the same rule. Many deep swimmers glide more than they dart, hanging almost still in the unlit water and letting the current do the work, spending muscle only when a rare chance for food arrives. With energy so precious, growth becomes a matter of decades. A deep-sea fish may add only the faintest length in a year, its body building itself grain by grain, in no apparent hurry to reach its full size. And what grows slowly matures late. Some deep fish do not become ready to breed until they are 30 or 40 years old, an age at which many creatures of the surface have long since lived and gone. The orange roughy is a quiet example. This deep water fish can live well past a century, maturing only in its 20s or 30s, so that a single fish may have been swimming before your grandparents were born. In the cold Pacific deep, certain rockfish keep the same long time. The Ruhe rockfish has been aged at more than 200 years, its true age read from the fine growth rings laid down inside its body. Yet no vertebrate wears its years like the Greenland shark. In the frigid waters of the North Atlantic and Arctic, this great gray fish moves through a life so long that it strains our sense of time. Studies of the tissue in its eyes suggest the Greenland shark may live several centuries, perhaps 300 years or more. Some individuals alive today may have been young when tall ships still crossed the open sea. Everything about this shark is unhurried. It cruises through the cold slower than a person's easy walk, gliding for hour upon hour, so measured in its motion that it seems to have all the time in the world. Such a life is earned an inch at a time. The Greenland shark may grow less than a centimeter in a year, so that reaching its full length of several meters is the work of many human lifetimes. It does not even become apparent until it is well over 100 years old. A century of growing must pass before it can carry young, a beginning that arrives at an age we would think of as ancient. The invertebrates of the deep can be older still, At the cold seeps of the seafloor, slender tube worms grow so unhurriedly that some are thought to have stood in the same spot for 200 or 300 years. Imagine a single one of them, rooted in the mud, swaying only slightly as the centuries pass overhead. Empires rise and fall in the sunlit world, and still it stands, feeding on the chemistry seeping from below. Deeper into age still are the corals of the cold. Far from any reef of warm water, deep-sea corals build their branching forms so slowly that a colony no taller than a person may already be thousands of years old. Some of these deep corals are among the oldest living things on Earth. Their innermost branches formed when the first written words were being pressed into clay. Each slender layer records many long years of unbroken life. There is a quiet logic to all this age, where the cold slows every process and little ever disturbs the depths. A body can simply keep going, unwearied by heat or haste, adding year upon unremarkable year. To live in the deep is to live in slow time. Nothing here rushes the seasons, for there are no real seasons to speak of, only the changeless cold and the endless night wrapping every hour into the next. So the abyss becomes a kind of living archive. Somewhere below you tonight, creatures are breathing that were already old when your city was founded, keeping their unhurried vigil far beneath the traffic of the waves. Even renewal keeps this gentle rhythm. Eggs may take years to develop, and the young grow up over decades, so that each generation stretches across a span that would cover all the memories of a human family. There is something restful in a world that never hurries. No clocks tick in the lightless deep, no rush toward tomorrow, only the long, gradual turning of countless lives measured in centuries rather than in days. And yet not all of the deep holds so still, for even in this timeless domain, a great movement is beginning to stir, one that rises each night through the dark midwater and sinks again with the coming light. For all the stillness we have wandered through, the deep is not motionless. Once each day it stirs with the greatest movement of living things on earth, a slow tide of animals that rises and falls with the turning sky. It begins in the twilight zone, that dim band between roughly 200 and 1,000 meters down, where a faint memory of daylight still filters from above. Here countless small creatures wait out the bright hours in the blue shadow. Lanternfish and bristlemouths, small squid, shrimp, and clouds of floating plankton gather in this shadowed layer by the billion. Bristlemouths alone may be the most numerous vertebrates on the planet, and each night they prepare to climb. By day, the sunlit surface is a perilous place for something small and soft. Light means visibility, and visibility means being seen by hunters, so these animals linger below, hidden in the dimness where their bodies fade against the gloom. As the sun sinks and the surface dims, a signal passes through the water. Fading light is the cue, and as it slips below a threshold each creature senses, the great ascent begins in the gathering dusk. Picture them lifting from the depths together, a living column climbing through the darkening sea. Some rise more than 500 meters in a single night, an astonishing journey for a body no longer than your finger. For an animal only a few centimeters long, this nightly climb is a marathon. Scaled to our size, it would be like walking many kilometers each evening and returning before morning, and doing so every day of a lifetime. They rise to feed under the cover of night. The surface waters bloom with tiny plankton, and the smaller creatures that graze on them, a rich pasture that is safe to visit only when the light is gone. Darkness is their shelter. Beneath a moonless sky, the black midwater conceals them while they eat, and the very lightlessness that makes the deep seem empty is exactly what allows this vast feast to unfold, hidden from the eyes above. But they are not alone in the shallows. Larger hunters follow them upward. Squid, swift fish, and other night predators that have learned the rhythm, ascending in the wake of their prey to share the brief abundance of the dark hours. Then, as the first gray light returns to the surface, the tide reverses. Sensing the growing brightness, the migrants turn downward and begin the long, unhurried sink back toward the safety of the twilight, away from the coming day. By full daylight, they have vanished from the shallows once more, resettled in the dim layer where they will hover and rest through the bright hours. The sea's surface looks empty again, giving no sign of the multitude below. Multiply this rise and fall across every ocean, and you have the largest daily migration of animals anywhere on Earth. Not the wildebeest of the plains nor the birds of the sky move so many bodies so far so faithfully. During the Second World War, sonar operators found something strange, a solid seafloor that rose each evening and sank each dawn. They called it the deep scattering layer, and only later understood it was not the ground at all. The phantom floor was life itself, a layer of migrating animals so dense that it bounced sound back like solid rock. Their gas-filled swim bladders caught the sonar's pulse, and a whole living ocean masqueraded as the seabed. Watching that false bottom climb toward the surface at dusk and descend at dawn, scientists realized the whole layer was chasing the light, or rather fleeing it. The rhythm of day and night was written plainly in the water. Light is the cue, but the timing runs deeper than that alone. Many of these travelers carry an internal clock, an inner sense of the day's turning, so that even under heavy cloud the great procession keeps its ancient schedule. This nightly commute does quiet work for the whole planet. Feeding at the surface and sinking by day, the migrants carry carbon from the sunlit waters into the deep part of a vast pump that helps steady the world's air. When they descend, they bring the surface downward with them. Their waste and their bodies join the endless drift of marine snow, feeding creatures far below who will never rise, linking the bright roof of the sea to its darkest floor. Not every creature makes the whole journey. Some rise only part way, some stay high, some barely stir. So the migration is less a single wall than a loose shifting curtain, each animal answering the night in its own measure. Seen across a whole day, the ocean seems to breathe. It draws its multitudes upward with a darkness like an inhalation, then lets them settle back down with the dawn, a slow tidal breath that has continued for millions of years. This pulse is older than any human eye that has watched the sea. Long before there were shores to stand upon, small lives were already climbing toward the night and sinking with the morning, keeping time with a turning world. Tonight, as you lie still, that same rhythm is unfolding somewhere beneath the waves. Countless small bodies are rising up through the dark to feed, or easing back down to rest, moving to the same day and night that hold you. The deep does not sleep as we do, yet it too keeps its hours rising and falling with a fidelity older than memory. And as this greatest of migrations turns once more toward the depths, we turn with it toward rest. When the great migration settles at last, the deep returns to its long stillness, and the countless travelers of the night sink back toward home. Far below the waves, the ocean folds itself into an unhurried quiet that has no end. This is where our long descent has carried us, through fading light and eternal night, past glowing lanterns and floating glass, down to the resting floor of the world. Here nothing hurries and nothing needs to. The darkness down here is not a thing to fear. It is only the oldest kind of night, older than any sky, a vast and even blackness that has cradled living creatures for longer than the land has held forests. In the unlit depths there is no dawn to wake for, no dusk to warn of, only the same enfolding dark hour after hour. Time loosens here, and the pull of any schedule melts away into the water. Consider how leisurely everything moves within this world. A jelly pulses once and then coasts along. An anglerfish hangs almost perfectly motionless. A deep-sea clam may outlast a full century of these tranquil and unchanging hours. All the while, marine snow keeps falling, a slow descent of pale flecks sifting down through the unlit water like the calmest snowfall on earth. It asks nothing of you, it simply falls and settles. Let your attention follow one of those flecks. Watch it wander downward without effort, turning now and then in currents too faint to feel, in no hurry to arrive, carried by nothing but its own soft weight. Here and there, a small light blooms and fades in the distance, a living spark gliding by on some slow errand. These are the only stars this world will ever know, and they wink out as easily as they came. The great pressure that surrounds these creatures is not a burden to them. They are built of it and filled with it, perfectly matched to their world. What would crush us simply holds them, close and even on every side. In the steady cold, life burns low and lasts long. Hearts beat unhurried, breaths come far apart. The whole machinery of living idles down to the barest ember, enough to carry on for years without strain. Across the abyssal plain, a soft sediment stretches farther than any desert, gray and level and undisturbed. A sea cucumber inches over it, a brittle star rests where it lies. Nothing here is in a rush to be anywhere. Somewhere in the lightless miles, a hydrothermal vent glows faintly and feeds its garden of pale tube worms. Elsewhere, an old whale fall gives itself slowly to the creatures gathered there. Life keeps its long, quiet work while you rest. You do not need to hold any of it in mind. The deep will tend itself through the night as it has for ages, whether we watch or not. You are free now simply to hover and to let go. Feel how the water carries every creature without their effort, bearing them along in the vast, dark cradle of the sea. Imagine yourself held the same way, weightless and unworried, resting on a current that will not let you fall. There is nowhere you must be, and nothing left to do. The tasks of the day have sunk away like marine snow, sinking down and out of reach, leaving only this wide, welcoming dark and the slow breath of the sea. Let your breathing fall into that same drowsy rhythm. Draw a long breath in, the way the ocean draws its tides, and let it ease out again, and feel your body grow heavier and calmer with each one. Picture yourself sinking, but with no fear in it, the way the migrating swarms sink home at daybreak, unafraid. Down past the last of the light, down through the falling flecks, down to where the water goes velvet and dark. Down here, the blackness is complete and kind, wrapping around you on all sides like the deepest, softest blanket. There is nothing to see, and so your eyes can finally close and rest as the creatures of the deep have always done. All around you, unseen, 1,000 quiet lives keep floating through the same tranquil gloom. You are not alone down here. You are simply one more resting thing among the many, carried on the same slow tide. The deep has kept this stillness for millions of years, and it will keep it long after tonight is forgotten. Its calm is older than worry, wider than memory, and there is more than enough of it to hold you. So let the whole vast ocean settle over you now, layer upon dark layer, each one heavier and more restful than the last. Let it carry the day away, and let yourself go loose, and let yourself go under. The day is fully behind you now, its cares dissolved. The lights have dimmed, the water has turned soft and dark, and the slow settling deep has made a place for you among its resting creatures. Rest now, then, far below the reach of the waves, cradled in that great and unhurried dark. Let the wandering lights, the falling snow, and the slow deep tides fold quietly around you and carry you down into sleep. Good night, traveler of the deep. The ocean will hold you through the long, dark hours as it holds all its quiet wanderers, and it will still be turning slow and calm when morning finds you. Sleep well and drift easy.